Start again.
All right. Welcome to the Art Hustle Podcast Gallery Conversations. Welcome back, your Captain Schiavo in your slimming black Hawaiian shirt.
Hey, stop. It's not the shirt. I lost a solid 15 pounds, by the way.
I am super proud of you. You
Well,
look,
it's all about, and it's not about my vanity, it's all about my health.
it is
So,
about it.
yeah, and I have another 5 pounds to go.
Oh my God. Yeah, like I've told you off record that now you're skinnier than me. Now you're like my motivation to get myself into shape.
Well, and I have to tell you, the only problem I have is that my wife is concerned I'm gonna start looking so good.
Mm.
Most of the local females around here are going to be jumping all over me, and she's going to have to get big barking dogs and put barbed wire around the property, things
Hasn't
like
that
that.
been the case from the get-go?
Yeah, pretty much. But now, as I'm an older man with a full head of white hair, and I
And a
drive a
red convertible.
yes, which means I've got health and I've got wealth, and when you're my age.
So you're a sugar daddy.
Yes, well, also an older woman go, my God, they've already killed off their first one or two husbands,
Oh
okay?
my God.
So now they're looking for a guy like me who's
For
got
fun, for fun.
yeah, for health and wealth and come on. So I'm a hot property. I'm a
You
hot property.
you're a hot ticket item.
Yeah,
So let's
go ahead.
today talk about your one of your, your favorite hobbies, which is fishing. And you had just posted up two videos of you fishing in Mauritius, correct?
Well, actually, yeah, I put up. It's actually one video. It's one whole video, but it's got
Mm,
parts. So the first half hour is and half an hour during the annual Mauritius Angler Shark Tournament that runs out of Mauritius Inlet, where I charted for 20 years. I charted the inlet and the bay and
mm, mm.
everything else. And then, and by the way, I was a part-time guy. I wasn't a full-time guy because I was
Yeah.
teaching school and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And then also, the second 2 half hours were on how to catch live bait. Okay, usually bunker, and then the second half hour there was to excuse me to how to fish for large striped bass and or bluefish with
Hmm.
live bait at the inlet.
Hmm.
And what was cool about those two half hours was that I'm running the boat. You can see some scenery as I'm running the boat up and down the inlet and across the bay and things like that.
Hmm.
And anyway, but those were not those were actual TV shows. They were TV shows from a former. There used to be a cable channel called the Brookhaven cable channel many
Hmm.
moons ago. Okay, and the host of the show was a woman named Lori Mangan,
Hmm.
and she was a well-known local fisher person, had won, uh, had a couple of trophy fish at the state level. I mean, she had
Wow.
some really big fish that she caught, various species. So she was a very well-known fisher person, and the show was very popular, quite frankly, for a local show.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was and she did the photography and the editing and all that, producer stuff that you do with your
Hmm. She's like
podcast.
me.
Okay? Yeah, for sure.
A one-woman show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the provenance, if you will, of those fishing videos.
Hmm. Hmm. And tell us about when you caught when you were about to catch something like really, really big,
Yeah.
and it turned out to be something else.
Oh, you're mean, by the way. Did you watch the video, right?
No, but I remember you telling me the
Oh,
last time.
one of the funniest parts of the fishing video. So now I think it was in the second half hour of that Mauritius thing. We go to the inlet, okay? And my buddy Ralph was my mate on in that filming and that show. And so we're drifting the inlet as we always used to do to catch a bass or
Hmm. Hmm.
bluefish or whatever. So all of a sudden I get something on the hook and it's heavy and I go, oh my God, this is gonna be a
This is big. This is gonna be a
this,
big
yeah,
one.
this is gonna be a 40 this is gonna be a 40 pounder, like no doubt. Okay, 40-pound bass, right?
Hmm.
So I'm hoisting the thing up. But I'm saying to myself, there's something not right here because it was more like dead weight. I didn't feel any uh,
Pull.
vibration in the line, any
Yeah.
wiggling.
Hmm.
So I pull it up, and what is it? It's a giant plastic bag or something. Okay. Now you're laughing, but here's the funny part about the story for me.
Hmm.
At the time, I was, I don't think I was the president. I was a member at the time. I wasn't, I became president later on. But I was a member of a fishing club called the North Shore Anglers that
Hmm.
was based in Port Jefferson.
Hmm.
And it started out being a club mostly for surf fishermen. They used to fish off the beach. And then young pups like me, we came in with money. We bought these, well, medium-sized boats, 25-foot boats, 27-foot boats, and became more of a boater fishermen's club
Hmm.
besides. So anyway, and we used to have our meetings at one of the favorite pub restaurants in Port Jeff at the time,
Hmm.
whose name I cannot no longer remember.
Hmm.
So now they're playing this video for all to see.
Oh, wow.
We had about
To the
45,
entire bar.
pretty much, and then we had the 45 club members
Hmm.
plus the rest of the bar, okay? And they see me, and I'm in, I'm doing my fishing in my paddle or whatever,
Hmm.
and I pull this up, and all these
Oh
fishers,
my
they were
God.
howling,
Oh my
howling.
God.
They were hysterical laughing. And of course, now, of course, for the rest, not only the rest of the night, for the rest of, I don't know how long, a year, two
Hmm.
years, they never let me forget
Oh
that
my
I was
God.
doing all this drama. Like I had this big fish on my pole, okay, a big fish on the rod, and
Hmm.
it turned out to be a big plastic bag.
Oh my God. I
And
can
it
only
was.
imagine the entire bar just going
Oh,
crazy.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
really? It was hysterical. It really
Oh
was
my.
funny, actually.
Now what's the biggest fish that you like? How many pounds was the biggest fish that you caught?
Well, it depends on the species. I mean, like, I've caught sharks and things like that. Those are heavier.
Hmm.
Probably my biggest bass
Hmm.
was, I would say it was in the mid 40s, 46 pounds, 45 pounds, around there.
Hmm.
And then, so that was pretty big. I mean, but, hey, I think the state record is something like 75 pounds. I mean,
Oh wow.
that's a
Hmm.
rarity.
Yeah.
Probably one of the favorite fish I used to fish for, and what got me started with getting really into saltwater fishing and getting a boat
Hmm.
was weak fish. Now, weak fish,
Hmm.
they're really gorgeous fish. They have a lot of color. They got yellowish fins and spots,
Oh wow.
and usually the what they call tide runners, the big ones, they kind of max out around, about anywhere from 13 to 15 pounds, I think.
Hmm.
I think my biggest one was 13 and a half pounds. I got a trophy for it with the club that year. Okay. And they're called weak fish, not because they're weak. It's because the tissues around the lips are weak. And
Oh.
so if you try to horse them in, if you don't have them hooked well, and you have them hooked in that tissuey area of their lip, you'll pull a hook right out of their mouths and you'll lose the fish. So
Mm-hmm.
when you play a weak fish, you got to play them very gently. You can't, like, you can horse in, they call it horsing it in, a bluefish or
Hmm.
a striped bass.
Slowly.
You- Yeah, you got to, but a weak fish, you got to be very gentle and have a kind of a loose drag. So if they take line, you don't
Yeah.
pull, they don't pull the hook out of their mouths. And,
Yeah.
and I love catching them. I love them
Oh.
because it really does take skill. Number one,
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
skill than
Yeah.
horsing in a bluefish.
Hmm.
And and they're just a beautiful fish, and they were good eating fish. They have nice white flesh.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I never met a weak fish I didn't like.
Yeah. And so you caught most of the stuff, like you have to catch and release some things too, right?
Well, I always did catch and release
Hmm.
striped bass. I don't care what size they were. Uh, the rules change. Sometimes there was a time when you could have as many as you wanted. Then you said no, you can only have two, and they have to
Mm.
be within a certain,
Size.
well, they had to be a certain lot. They had a minimum length and a maximum length and a
Hmm.
certain weight. Uh, I think right now it's still down to, I haven't fished for bass in a while, but I think it's one bass per person per day, and
Oh, wow.
they have to be in a certain range. Okay.
Oh,
But I felt that with bass, you, you needed to release as many as you could so that we could continue to propagate. Because for a while there, they were really, really low in terms of volume.
hmm. Hmm.
Now they've come back in a major way, and it's not so bad.
Hmm.
Same thing with fluke. Now, another reason why I would let a lot of striped bass go is because my wife, she preferred eating fluke, which are winter,
Oh,
they're a summer flounder. Okay,
okay.
they're like a halibut, which can get to be like 800 pounds.
Oh,
They
wow.
look like a halibut, but they're going to be like a big one. A big fluke now would be like a 12 pounder or something.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but I used to love, and I again when I fished for fluke and I fished for weak fish, I
Hmm.
was using light to ultralight tackle, which meant ultralight tackle was like 6 pound test line,
Hmm.
3/8 ounce bucktails. I mean,
Hmm.
really light tackle, and
Hmm.
as a consequence, it made it more fun. And then when I had my did my chartering,
Hmm.
I used to put my charters. I would teach them how to fish with light tackle,
Hmm.
and what they loved about it was
Now, is
you
light tackle like a lighter hook,
a lighter line,
lighter
and
line?
also a lighter pole where the pole is not as stiff and
Mm.
it's not as thick and
Okay.
it's very flexible. Okay, like when that fish hits, it's going to be like turned into a U. I mean, it's going to be like an
Oh,
upside down U. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
and but what was cool about it was if they had, let's say, a 3 pound, 4 pound fluke on it, it
Hmm.
felt like a 50 pound tuna because it was just
Oh, okay. Because
so
the whole
light.
thing would start bending.
Yeah, yeah, and they just had so much fun. And what they found out was, and sometimes my one of my great fishing buddies is a guy named Freddie K, and we would catch fish after fish using this ultralight tackle, and
Hmm.
these other guys on like we went on a couple of party boats together, and they couldn't understand why we were catching so many fish.
Hmm.
They were, they first of all, we could feel the fish better.
Mm.
And second of all, the fish kind of liked the whole small bait thing we were using. Okay.
Mm.
And we were getting fish after fish, and they were legal size fish,
Hmm.
So, and I think now, at the time we were fishing, a legal fluke, I think was 15 inches. Now I think it's up to like 17 or to 19 because again, as fish species start to dwindle, they've
Hmm.
got to change the rules so that the fish don't become extinct. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. They need to,
And this has always been a part of the problem is that commercial fishermen for the longest time I have to say this, it was a matter of ignorance, I'll be honest with you.
Hmm.
They always thought that that Mother Nature in the ocean was going to be just oh, and the ocean will take care of
just
itself.
be endless, right? Endless
Yeah,
supply.
and they don't realize, guess what? No, that's not it. You have to talk about sustainability. That's the
Yeah,
word,
yeah.
sustainability when in fishing. Okay,
Mhm.
why do you think so many commercial operations now are in they're farm fishing salmon, they're farm
They're
fishing
farm
striped bass.
fishing everything, right? Flounder,
Exactly.
salmon. Hmm.
I'll tell you a fish that I never eat, have never eaten it, will never eat it. Okay, is
Hmm.
tilapia.
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 All
Now
right, I need
listen
to
to this.
write, I gotta write that down. Don't
It's
eat tilapia.
yeah, no. Well, look, well, it's a personal thing.
Oh.
T, you spell Tilipia, tilapia.
Mhm,
Okay, now
mhm.
that is one of that species is probably one of the oldest formed fish
Mm.
in history. The Israelis, the people in the Middle East have been fish farming tilapia for well over 5,000 years.
Mhm,
5,000 years.
mhm.
Okay? I mean, and of course you still have tilapia because of it, you know. And there's nothing, I guess there's nothing intrinsically wrong with it. I just said, you know what? I'm spoiled. I want different kinds of
Are
fish.
they bottom feeders or which fish is a bottom feeder?
Fluke and flounder are bottom feeders,
Okay.
okay? They're flat. They lie on the bottom
Yeah,
flat.
yeah. That's what
Okay?
I've seen like pictures of these
Yeah.
flat fishes, and I'm like, which one are
Yeah,
those?
that's what they are. Flounder, halibut, of they're. I'll tell you something. Talking about bottom feeders. Let's go to crustaceans for a second.
Hmm.
Lobsters, blue claw crabs, okay?
Hmm.
They're all bottom feeders, and let me be as blunt about this as I can be.
Hmm.
They literally eat shit on the bottom of the
The
ocean.
ocean. Oh.
And what they do is like some magnificent machines, or they're like an alchemist dream. An alchemist would like to turn base metals into gold.
Yeah, yeah.
They
So they,
turn shit on the bottom
yeah.
into gold because their meat, lobster meat, flounder, very sweet, and tasty.
Hmm.
It's miraculous what they turn all that garbage
And
into.
then they're cleaning the oceans too,
Absolutely.
right?
And that's why you don't want to overfish those kinds of species, okay? You don't want to
Mhm.
overfish the crabs. You don't want to overfish lobster,
But they
okay?
do.
And also, I'll tell you something else too. But even the sharks, sharks, oh, they're dangerous. No, sharks don't want to eat humans. They really don't like humans. Most sharks with half a brain, they bite you and go, oh, this is not good.
Like this
This
is
is
not
not,
tasty.
this is not a snare. This is not a seal.
Hmm.
This is not a dolphin. No, no, forget that. Okay. So, but sharks are scavengers, and they clean the bottom, and they keep other fish from getting
You
overwhelming.
need all this for the whole ecosystem of the,
Yeah,
ocean.
and I have to say, and this is where I have to slam the Chinese. Sorry,
Uh-oh.
shark fin soup. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
They used to catch these sharks and just cut out their fins and let the rest of it, you know, go gross.
Yeah, yeah.
And that they got to stop that because these sharks are.
Yeah, I think there's a whole thing where they stopped at once
But
people knew what was happening.
by the way, I mean I'm the edible sharks that I'm familiar with
Hmm.
happen to be and we that you can catch locally in
Hmm.
local Atlantic waters would be mako sharks
Hmm.
and thresher sharks. And
Mm.
I think I told you once before that mako sharks, the meat looks in terms of texture and tastes just like swordfish.
Swordfish. Yes, I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so unscrupulous fish vendors will sell mako shark steaks at
Hmm.
swordfish steak prices.
Prices. Yeah, that's crazy.
Mako is much cheaper.
Hmm.
Swordfish was much more expensive. Okay,
Hmm.
swordfish though have come back in terms of a species, and people who fish for sharks love fishing for makos because not only do they taste good,
Hmm.
but they also are when you catch them, they'll jump out of the water like a some
Oh,
trout or a tarpon or something.
yeah, yeah.
They'll fly, okay, and
Oh,
they're really exciting and fun to
to
catch.
catch. Yeah, yeah.
Thresher sharks are more deep water sharks. They're mid depth to deep, and they have these
Are they
long.
stronger? Do they like fight
Yeah,
more?
and they have these long, skinny top tails. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, they're also very good to eat. A lot of other sharks, like blue sharks and stuff, you can't. I know in some cultures they'll eat them, but they have to really prepare them in ways. They have this. They tend to their blood and insides will turn to like ammonia smelling and
Oh,
tasting stuff.
really?
Yeah, it's a difference in their body chemistry.
Oh, wow.
So but shark fishing to me is easy.
Hmm.
Okay. It's fun when you catch a shark, but it's kind of almost boring where you put out a jump stick. I mean, it's easy in the sense that once they're around, they come in, they smell the blood from the chum, they
Hmm.
like the noise. People will bang on the sides of their boats and they'll make all kinds of noise.
Hmm.
They're attracted to that.
Yeah, because isn't there also you have to be careful, isn't there skin? Like it's also like really sharp.
Well, I'll tell you about this. Yeah, because I remember when my boat was new, I didn't really want to do much shark fishing because their skin is like sandpaper on the outside.
Wow, that's
Like
crazy.
unlike porpoises that are nice and smooth to get into the
Hmm.
water,
Hmm.
really hydrodynamic.
Yeah.
Uh, Sharks, their skin, they've got these almost like the roughness of their skin.
Hmm.
What makes the skin rough is what they call denticles, which means
Oh,
small teeth. They're
small
like,
teeth.
yeah,
Wow.
denticles, yeah. So it's denticles. So
Yeah.
what happens is they will really scrape up the gel coat on your boat if
Wow.
because when you bring the sharks, you have to control them. You got to bring
Hmm.
them alongside. Usually, you got a hook in their mouth, and then you're going to tail rope them to
Hmm.
keep them from lashing out and whatever. Now, especially with blue sharks, like on the film that you see there,
Hmm.
those are blue sharks, and they're very flexible. So they could turn so if you caught them by the tail,
Hmm.
and you didn't have a hook in their mouths, they could flex around and bite your hand off.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
Yeah,
Wow.
so you got to make sure that you got somebody on their head and somebody on their tail.
Hmm.
And then, of course, we would always release blue sharks.
Hmm.
Why? Because they were not necessarily edible as far as we were concerned. Okay, we
Hmm.
release them, and we always used hooks and wire leaders that would rust quickly so that they wouldn't hurt them when they would.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Okay. Yeah. Did you ever come across like sharks and stuff when you were surfing?
Yes, but not like we would see them,
Okay.
and we knew they were there, and we'd see the odd fin or so. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, I remember where I did most of my surfing early on. I was at Gilgo Beach, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that's east of Jones Beach and whatever. Uh, and in those days too, they had a great outer sandbar. In fact, you could go from the sandbar and the water, the foam, once the wave broke, would go all the way into the beach. Uh, in the mid '60s, we had a series of hurricanes which kind of dug out the space between that outer bore and the shore break, and
Mm-hmm.
you needed really big waves to kind of break that you didn't need before to surf. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but we knew on the outside of that outer bar,
Mm-hmm.
the sharks were cruising parallel to the sandbar,
Really?
looking for fish to eat.
Oh.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, this is where fisherman fisherman's knowledge comes in. The probably the most the time when the tide would be going out,
Mm-hmm.
and on the ocean beaches, the current would be going out as well. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because tide and current are different. Tide means the water goes up and down.
Mm-hmm.
Current means the water's coming in and out. So in an inlet, you say, well, okay, the tide's going to be high at, let's say, 12 o'clock, noon, but the current's going to keep running in like it emerges. It would come in running in for another hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because people would confuse the two. The
Yeah.
best time to fish at Moriches
Mm-hmm.
for striped bass was from high tide to the end of the incoming current, and in
Mm-hmm.
reverse, low tide to the end of the outgoing current. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because fish like current because it makes the bait travel more easily into their mouths. Okay,
Oh, okay. Less
without having,
effort.
yeah. I mean, for example, I always used to tell my charters on the boat. I'd say, well, they said, well, how come we're fishing at this time? Why did we start fishing for bass at 9 o'clock in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, no, because we were fishing for bait for bass at 9 o'clock in the morning. But
Mm-hmm.
I said, I fish by my watch. And they go, well, what do you mean? I said, when the tide is right, I will
Mm-hmm.
take you to that spot.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take you to that spot at that tide, and
That's what I
we're going to fish the current.
thought.
We're gonna,
My
yeah,
iWatch was talking.
very good. And we're going to fish that current, and that current's going to
Mm.
last an hour and a half. So
Hmm.
you can have an hour and a half of prime time
To
to catch a
catch.
striped bass.
Hmm.
And they'd say, how come? I said, here's why. I said, as that current comes in, when the current first comes in, it's coming in at 4 knots an hour. Doesn't
Hmm.
sound like much, but when you're on a boat and you're zipping past the jetty at Mauritius, you're going fast at 4 knots an hour. Okay,
Hmm.
those striped bass won't start to really feed vigorously
Hmm.
until it gets to be around 2 knots per hour. And
Mm.
from 2 knots to slack tide, that's super prime time.
Mm.
Okay. And I would tell them when you put your bait down,
Yeah.
okay, and it hits the bottom, and you tighten up the line, get ready. I said, from the time that bait hits the bottom to the time a fish is going to hit it, it's going to be anywhere 30 to 45 seconds. Okay,
Mm. Seconds.
seconds. I said, and the drift is only going to last 90 seconds. It's going to last an hour and a half.
Wow.
A minute and a half.
Yeah.
Okay. And they would, oh, come on, come on, come on. Usually, by the time I finish telling them that, the
They
30
already
seconds
caught
have
something.
arrived, and they got a fish on. Okay.
Wow.
And they go, how do you know that? I said, hey, it's experience,
Hmm.
it's knowledge,
Hmm.
it's study. I mean, I remember when
You have
Ronnie,
to be one with the ocean.
yeah, and of course, between my years of surfing, I knew about currents and waves and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then I remember Ronnie was astonished when I first got into like professional fishing and charter boating. I think I had bought a book called I think it was called Through the Fish's Eye,
So you were
and it was
already married before you started fishing
well,
boat.
okay. Let's digress to the backstory.
Oh, okay.
When I met Ronnie, I still
Hmm.
had my horse.
So you had to get rid of the horse.
Well, here's what happened. I had my horse for 10 years,
Yeah.
and I was kind of, for lots of reasons, I knew that probably I was going to have to sell him because I probably wasn't going to at the time, I probably couldn't have afforded a horse property.
Hmm.
And, I just felt okay. I as much as I loved horses. I'm one of those people where like I work very hard to get good at something.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it's been there, done that, and I'll go to my grave loving horses.
Mm-hmm.
Never wavered. I still watch. I hate to admit this, but I'll watch the Cowboy Channel on how they train reining horses and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'll watch certain times they have rodeos on, and people say, "Oh my God, that's so cruel." I said, "I got news for you. Those bucking horses that you think they're hurting those horses, those hurt horses, the ones that are bucking,
Mm-hmm.
they're worth $250,000 or
Wow.
more
Wow.
because they are, and if you went into their corrals or went into their stall, uh, you could pet their heads. They'd lick your face. They're
Mm-hmm.
as gentle as little dogs, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But their job is to buck.
Yeah.
And a lot of horses, when they're good at what they do, they're very, very expensive. And
Mm.
believe me, you don't want, there's nobody in rodeo who wants to abuse any of those horses,
Yeah.
okay? Or cows or any of those animals. They don't, that's just not what they do. All right. So anyway, but here's what I said. I said, gee, my this woman I want to marry,
Mm-hmm.
she's not a horse person.
Mm-hmm.
And my first wife wasn't a horse person.
Mm-hmm.
But here's where my first marriage suffered. And I always tell the story that when winter came and my first wife wanted a winter coat
Yeah.
and my horse needed a winter coat, guess who got the winter coat first?
Horse.
Thank you. So that shows you what a knucklehead I was as a husband.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It also explains why the marriage didn't last much more than a year.
Yeah.
It was there were many other reasons that it didn't work. I and they were all my fault. I own them all. I
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You
all
didn't realize happy wife, happy life yet.
well, it wasn't that. I didn't realize that, as you can tell from some of these podcasts, I've always had, well, as a student, I have a very extroverted, strong personality.
Mm-hmm.
And she was younger, and I wasn't that wise for a guy my at that age still.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was probably chewing her up and not even realizing it until it was too late.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always felt bad about that, and I tried to amend whatever I could, with
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
and after her. But anyway, I digress. So I just said, you know what? My first marriage did not do well and suffered because of my horse.
Yeah.
Because that's the other part of it too is horses need work. They need time. You
Mm-hmm.
can't just let the horse sit in a stall and go there to pet him once a week. And that's
Mm-hmm.
out. You gotta work them. They want to work. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you gotta kind of keep their training up.
Yeah.
And I just knew I wasn't gonna be able to uh,
Take
give
care of. Mm-hmm.
yeah invest as much time and effort into him.
Yeah.
I found him a good owner, a woman lawyer who could afford him, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it worked out fine. But anyway, but I said to Ronnie, I said, well, look, since you're not a writer, and by the way, she used to ride double with me, and she
Oh,
kind of
she did?
yeah, she used to kind of get used to. She never rode him alone,
Yeah.
but she'd be around him, and she got to the point where she was more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, but I said, well, what are you into? She goes, well, I kind of like boats.
Mm. Okay.
And my first father-in-law had a boat, and I enjoyed that. And I said, well, okay, we'll get a boat. So I started small, and then finally I bought my 25-footer, which is what I really charted for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, so that's how I really got into it. I got into it because of her, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because she went, and so, but I'm the kind of guy where I've always been intellectually curious. So what did I do? I said, okay, gee, I got my captain's license to be a better, safer boater,
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
fishing captain, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But I remember her remarking, I came home with a book called The Fish's Eye about how fish eyes work, how they
Mm-hmm.
see color or lack of it,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of other stuff about how fish, move and think and whatever
Mm-hmm.
in an underwater environment. And she was astonished that I did that, you know?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But this is I've always been. I mean, I
Your
read every book.
curiosity.
Yeah,
You
when I was
know.
a kid, I read every book in the elementary school, junior high school, and high school library about horses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I got into the fishing, I did the same thing with fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just a constant, get just being into it, and knowing more about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's really the deal with the fishing.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to the shark fishing, I always found shark fishing it's kind of boring waiting for the fish to hit.
Hmm.
It's exciting. It's very exciting when you're fighting the fish.
Hmm.
But again, tournaments you have to say, okay, what's the biggest fish that's likely to get caught?
Yeah. Did you
And
do a lot of tournaments?
no, I think I did 3 tournaments,
Mm-hmm.
and my fishing buddy Fred won one of them.
Hmm.
We were in separate boats, and it was but we were in a fog. We were about 40 miles offshore in a fog.
Hmm.
I had my chum slick out. He had his chum slick out, but he didn't know that the way the currents were running and our boats were, he was kind of close to mine.
Oh.
He was in my chum slick,
Hmm.
okay, and this thresher shark comes in, and before you know it, he catches the thresher shark. He
Mm-hmm.
wins the contest.
Oh,
But I did not hold it against him.
yeah.
It was an honest mistake because we were in a fog.
Yeah.
I didn't know where he was. He
Hmm.
didn't know where I was. When I tell you, I could barely see the bow of my boat. It was a 25
Really?
foot boat. I'm standing in the middle of it. So let's say I couldn't see 10 to 15 feet in front of me.
So how do you not get into like an accident with another boat if it's in such a thick fog?
You do everything extremely slowly, and I didn't have radar on the boat, my
Yeah, that's
boat.
what I mean. Like usually there would be like a radar, right? But these
I
are
didn't have
smaller
I had every
vessels.
electronic world known to man on my boat except radar.
Oh.
And he had a 25-foot boat as well, and he didn't have radar.
Oh.
So we were both now, I mean, because we normally didn't really need it. We weren't traveling long distances all the time, and
Hmm. And usually it's not that fog, that thick fog.
right, right.
Mm.
So that was really an odd time. Now, if I got another boat tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
at pretty much 25 foot or more, I would definitely have radar on it.
You need radar, yeah.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, but and then of course he got that years later he got a 37-foot boat. We took it from Mount Sinai Harbor down to Baltimore Harbor.
Oh, wow,
Yeah,
nice.
That was a great trip, and we did like
Hmm.
all the intercoastal waterways and
Oh,
stuff.
that's so cool.
But he had radar on the
Yeah,
boat, and
radar,
one of
yeah.
the things that I liked about having radar in his boat, it wasn't just to see other boats. You could see storms coming
Oh,
from miles away.
that's great.
Yeah, it's great. So if you could go around him, you go around. I mean, but it was or
Hmm.
couldn't, and you were close to land, you could scoot in and
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you know.
Now, when you did this show, did you ever come across anybody who like watched the show and then like, oh, I saw your show and I learned something.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. One guy in particular, I used to get people waving or oh, I saw the show, loved it, whatever the show was, because
Hmm.
But one guy comes over, and I was drifting for bass, as always. And he goes, I remember it was kind of a grayish morning too.
Hmm.
Um, and he comes over, and his boat was about the same size as mine, around 25 feet. And he goes, "Hey, man," he goes, "Captain Bill." I said, "Oh, yeah, great. I saw that show."
Hmm.
"Oh, that's great." He goes, he said, "I've been fishing here for 4 years."
Hmm.
He said, "I never knew half that stuff
Wow.
about getting, you know, how to get the bait, where to get the bait, and also how you did your rigging, okay, to
Hmm.
catch these fish."
Hmm.
He said, "Thank you very much." I said, "Oh man, I said, I'm glad somebody watched the show. I don't know. I figure again, it's a small cable channel.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because you
People,
never know who's watching, just like these podcasts. I
yeah,
never
you never
know
know.
who's watching
Yeah.
these.
For example, I meant to tell you though, I had gone. I don't know what I was doing something with my iPad, and I hit like YouTube Shorts or something, and I saw that some of your stuff, unfortunately, with other interviewees, had many views, many
Hmm.
views.
Hmm.
I saw the one with the little clip of my mother with
Yeah.
7,300 views. That's
Yep.
ridiculous.
I know. And I just reposted that again to test the algorithm. And like I can pull it up now, but it got a lot of views also. And I was
Really.
testing it. I'm like, let me just re-put it up and see what happens. And it got a lot. Let's see. I put up
And
your
what?
guitar. I had a little video of you showing me guitars that got 120.
Oh, really?
We were in the car driving to get pizza. That one got 55 recently.
Right.
And then I posted the one about the photo again recently. Let's see. It got a lot. I was like, it got 1,000 views, and I put it
That's
up one day ago.
That's to me is I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Okay, why can't we do this with these video podcasts?
We can. The problem is that these are all on the computer, and all these little ones I have, they're on my phone. So like when I'm just sitting around watching TV, I just make the little shorts. So
Ah,
these are all on the computer. So to do them on the computer would take me more time as
oh.
opposed to doing short
Well,
little
I just think you really need to do that.
I do because the shorts are what's popular. People only want to watch videos for like 15 seconds.
Well, I just had this discussion with this a woman from the garden club, and she said she listens to podcasts, but to sit down and watch a video is another story, which I totally understand because I feel the same way. In other words, I mean, like, I don't watch. I mean, I watch the video podcast that you've done with a few other people.
Mhm.
I do that because it's you, and I know the other people. Okay,
Yeah. Mhm.
but I could, and I always tell people, look, if you're going to ever watch any of the podcasts with me, get yourself one or two bottles of wine or your favorite
Yeah.
bottle of scotch, uh, drink, get drunk, and it's going to take, it'll
And then
make you,
just put it on. Yeah.
yeah, put it on, get drunk, you can laugh
But
and
I
whatever.
also started putting these in podcast form where it's just audio as well.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
it's also in Spotify, and it's
Really?
also in there's another forum that's in that people, so whatever thing that you listen to podcasts is Spotify, and then maybe it's Apple or something where
Oh,
it's
wow.
just the audio from.
And then how do you know how many listeners you getting?
I haven't checked it lately, but because I put it up before the summer, so I haven't checked it. But I started putting them all on there as well. I don't know how many I got through, but
Look, I could see. Hey, look, even for myself, now that I've lost, 15 pounds, I don't mind looking at my face anymore. Okay, but I don't like looking at my chubby face, in my old age. So I could probably bear to listen to me more than easily than I could
mm,
watch me. I admit to that. I don't. I told
okay.
you.
No, it's funny. The other thing about these short videos, I had put up a random ramen noodle video,
Right,
like that I had taken like months ago,
right.
and it got 4 point, it got over 4,000 views
Wow.
on a ramen noodle video. So
Well, hey, by the way, ramen noodles are big, and
yeah,
did it show your Asian face on it too?
no,
Oh, it didn't really.
no. Mm-mm.
Oh man, come on, that would give it some major legitimacy,
I know, I know. Maybe I should take some videos of me eating ramen noodles.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, going back to the fishing now. You wanted to talk about
Yes,
fishing.
back to the fishing. Now, what are some of the like life lessons that you've learned through all of these like hobbies of yours?
Well, like all of them, I think the horses, the surfing, the moments of who was the I think there was a psychologist named Abraham Maslow who talked about quote peak experiences unquote in
Mm-hmm.
life. I think it was him. Um, these are peak experiences. If it's sports people live for the peak experience.
Hmm.
And whether it's the golfer hitting the perfect shot off the tee, that he hears that it's a solid hit and
Oh, the sound, yeah.
the
Hmm.
ball arcs over and hits the green and like,
Hmm.
oh man, that's orgasmic to a
Yeah,
golfer.
like
I
the
get it.
contact of the ball and the
Yeah, yeah.
golf club.
It's an orgasmic experience for the golfer. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, for me, surfing, uh, being coming down a big slide down a wave and making a big sweeping bottom turn, then getting locked into the tube for a good long time.
Hmm.
That's like multi-orgasmic.
Hmm.
The only other thing I liked as much, sometimes even more, was on a really nice glassy 4 to 6 foot wave,
Hmm.
and like hanging five and hanging 10, just staying on the nose of the board for as long as I could on a
Wow.
nice smooth. I used to love that. I used
Yeah.
to love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then with the horse, for example, he was fast. He had been a quarter horse racehorse,
Hmm.
and just riding him at a full gallop, it was like riding a locomotive. It was like riding a
Mm.
train.
Hmm.
You'd hear the thundering of his hooves. You'd feel him just all power. He was a
Yeah.
stallion,
Yeah.
all power. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, and then I did a couple of match races, did 3 match races with him, and I won all three because he was
Wow.
fast. Okay.
Wow.
Talk about again the adrenaline rush. when I crossed the finishing line, it was like nothing. I mean, it was like
Hmm.
nothing I've ever experienced.
Hmm.
Also, since he was a stallion, I used to ride him to show you how nuts I was in my 20s. I used to ride him bareback out in the woods. Okay, now
Yeah.
most people will tell you you don't ride stallions bareback,
Hmm.
especially when you're out. And if he ever got loose, he'd hurt himself or kill other people or whatever.
Really?
But I used to ride him on trail rides,
Hmm.
and where our barn was, there were other barns. Okay,
Hmm.
and again, as a stallion, if there was a mare in heat and he smelled her on the wind, which you could do miles away.
He's going?
No, well, no. Here's what he'd do.
Oh.
He'd start to whinny. He'd start to call to her. Okay.
Oh.
Now, remember, I'm bareback. You, it was like sitting on a 1,200 pound four-legged trumpet. Okay. All of a sudden, I'd feel his lungs expand, his chest coming out. My
Really?
legs are like I'm wrapped around him. Okay, and then he's he's calling to this mare and his body's shaking. Okay, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is unbelievable,
Wow.
unbelievable. I never felt such power. Okay, and remember, that horse was 1,200 pounds. Okay,
Mhm.
and we talk about an adrenaline rush. It used to make the hairs on my head, you know, s- perk up because I'm thinking, my God, this is really something special. Okay, something interesting, and um, and then with the fishing, uh, and they all have something in common. And when I tell you about the fishing, when you have a fish on the line, okay, the rod is bent, the line is taut, okay,
Mhm.
and that's how when fishermen send messages to each other, emails or letters, they'll always end it with tight lines. Okay, no, the lines have to be tight. What does that mean? It means you got a good fish on. Okay,
Mhm.
so the fact of the matter is that that's the adrenaline rush right there. You've got this fish on the line. Partly you don't know a what it is, you don't know how big it is. Okay, and your adrenaline is just rushing, rushing, rushing. And here's what they all have in common with the adrenaline rush and all those sports that I mentioned.
Mhm.
It's a very zen thing. You're in the now. You are present. You are
Yeah.
focused.
You're with
Nothing
nature.
else counts. Nothing else is important. You don't think about anything else but what is going on in that present moment. Okay? That's a wonderful, beautiful thing. It's one of the reasons why men like to go fishing and surfing. They, whatever, like when we were surfing, we paddle out and we say, okay, all of our problems are
Don't
on the
care in
land.
the world. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
just
out
present.
here, none
Hmm.
of that, none of those problems exist.
Yeah.
We don't care about them. We're just out here, riding Mother Ocean and having the best possible day we can.
Yeah.
See? That's
I love
that's what
it.
it's about. Yeah,
I
that's what
love
it's
it. So
about.
on that note, thank you very much for joining me today in giving us how to live a better life and really get some hobbies that where you are more present and in the now.
Hey, you know what? This is why people take drugs too, and it's the adrenaline rush.
Yeah, and people are taking drugs to get out of their head. They're thinking too much or they're
Yeah.
in
I mean,
their
and
gadgets
again,
too much.
I've never been a drug taker. I've never been a smoker.
Hmm.
My thing was, I think life and nature provides enough mind focusing, bending,
Hmm.
phenomenal experiences. You don't need artificial ones. You don't need
Yeah, yeah,
drugs and alcohol and stuff like that.
yeah. I love it. Thank you
Right?
so much for joining me today.
Thank you for asking me stuff about stuff that I really enjoyed doing.
Well, I think it's very beneficial. That way people understand more now because, kids are on their devices too much
Oh
and
God,
feel
yeah,
like they need to get out into nature more and you know,
yeah.
find some other
Well,
hobbies.
I spend most of my life outdoors now. I can enjoy as an older person. I can enjoy my indoor life now. So now
Now it's your garden and indoor.
yeah, right. My garden, and I'm catching up on my reading again, and I'm
Mhm.
watching some movies. And sometimes my joy is I'm watching old movies from when I was younger, and I'm reading some of my favorite books from years ago. So it's all good as long as I'm up and breathing.
Exactly. As long as you're healthy and getting into a good weight and enjoying everything right now.
That's for sure. Well, listen, you take care. We'll talk
Thank you.
again.
Okay,
All righty.
talk to you later. Thank you. Bye.